Hi guys, it's Miss CL. Looking through your supplemental packet, it looks like you guys have some area and perimeter problems. So I wanted to do an area and perimeter review. So let's start off with defining what is area. So area is the amount of space that a shape takes up. So if I'm looking at the rectangle here to the left, we have the length and we have the width. Later we'll use L for length and W for width. But the area, like I said, is the amount of space that the shape takes up. So the space that this rectangle takes up is what I'm highlighting right now. So everything inside here is what we define as area. All right, let's do perimeter. So what is perimeter? So perimeter is the distance around a shape. So in the rectangle to the left, the perimeter would be following the distance that goes around the shape and seeing how long that is. Okay, so we have area, which is figuring out how much space a shape takes up, and we have a perimeter. Perimeter is finding the distance around a shape. Area and perimeter both have what we call formulas. There are quick expressions that we can use to help us solve these types of problems. So area will be represented by A, and the formula for area is L, length, times W, width. And the formula for perimeter, which is P, equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And if we go back up and look at our shape and the highlighting that I did, you'll notice that we have 2 lengths. Here's 1 and here's 2, which is why we have 2 here. We also have 1, 2 widths, which is why we have the 2 here. And we combine them or add them together. All right, so let's do some area practice. So area equals length times width. In this case here, this is our length. So area equals, we're going to replace 8 for L times, and then W is 4. So instead of writing W, we'll write 4. Now we have to simplify this part of the equation. So A equals, what is 8 times 4? 32. So the area of this rectangle is 32. And we always do units squared. So there's not a unit after each of our numbers, like 8 feet, 4 feet. So that's why I'm using the general term. But if it was feet, it would be feet squared. Let's practice that again. So again, our formula for area equals length times width. Area equals, let's start filling in the information we know. We know that the length is 10. So instead of L, I'm going to put 10 times, and the width is 5. So instead of W, I'll put 5. We need to simplify this part of our equation. So A equals 10 times 5 is 50. And again, it would be units squared. We don't have units after these numbers, so when that's the case, that's when we use the general term of units, which is U squared, which is the exponent of 2. Last one. Again, our formula for area is A equals length times width. Okay, we know that our length is 6 and our width is 3.
So let's go ahead and fill in the information we know. Length was 6, width was 3. Oops. Okay, and now let's simplify this part of our equation. Area equals 18 units squared.
All right, let's move on to some perimeter practice. Remember, perimeter is the distance around the shape. So first off, let's talk about some things. Because I don't want to jump into the formula with the first rectangle right away. We'll do that with the second and third. Okay, let's talk about this rectangle. Okay, a rectangle is where you have two sides that are congruent from each other, which congruent means equal. You also have right angles, which are 90 degrees. So a rectangle has four 90-degree angles, okay? And they say that the sides across from each other are congruent or equal. So that's why I put that little equal sign across. So that means if this is 8, that means this side should also be 8. If this side is 4, that means this side also has to be 4. So that's why we use the formula we use, which is P equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And that's because if you go back and look at our shape, we have 2 widths, which is 4 and 4, and 2 lengths, which are 8 and 8. So let's go ahead and fill in the information that we know. P equals 2 times our length was 8. I'm going to put in a parentheses, especially because there's not a symbol in between our 2 and L. Remember, if there's not a symbol between a letter or variable with a coefficient or a number in front, you automatically assume it's multiplication. So we also know what W is, and that stands for 4. So we have some multiplication problems we have to take care of first. So we're going to do the 2 times 8 and the 2 times 4 second. So perimeter equals 2 times 8 is 16 plus 2 times 4 is 8. So we add these up, simplify that. Our perimeter equals 16 plus 8 is 24. And this is just units. If our units after these numbers had been feet per se, then instead of our units just being units, it would be feet. Okay, let's move on to number 2. So we're just going to go ahead and jump in straight with the formula. Okay, we have perimeter equals 2 times our length plus 2 times our width. So let's fill in those variables we know, which are length and width. Perimeter equals 2 times our length is 10 plus 2 times our width, which is 5. Okay, we got to simplify these multiplication problems from left to right. So perimeter equals 2 times 10 is 20 plus 2 times 5 is 10. So perimeter here would be 30 units. Last but not least, we have our rectangle with length and width of a length of 6 and a width of 3. So let's start plugging in our formula.
2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Perimeter equals 2 times our length is 6 and width is 3. So length 6, width 3. Got to simplify the multiplication problems from left to right. So perimeter equals 2 times 6 is 12 plus 2 times 3 is 6. So perimeter equals 18 units.
You'll also see a couple of problems where you're given the area and you need to either find the length or the width. So we'll do 2 examples of those types of problems. All right, so it says, what if I am given the area and need to find the length or width? So you have your area. We know our width is 3, but our length is what we're unsure of. So we still want to start with our formula, which is A equals length times width. And we want to fill in the variables that we know. We know that area equals 27, or A equals 27. So instead of writing A, I'll write 27 equals, we don't know the length, so length will stay in L, times our width, which is a 3. Okay, now we've talked about this in class where you have to use opposite or inverse operations to solve for a variable. In this case, we're solving for L. So we have to get L all by itself on one side of the equal sign. In order to do that, I have to move things from one side to the other side of the equal sign. And you do that using the inverse or the opposite operation. So if I look right now, the operation that I see happening is multiplication, and I'm multiplying by 3. Okay, so to get rid of that from the right side and move it to the left, I have to do the opposite of multiplying by 3.
The opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3.
So if I do that to one side of the equal sign, I've got to do it to the other side. We know that 3 over 3 is the same thing as 1 whole, so I can get rid of this fraction, and that's basically just leaving me with L times 1, length times 1, which is the same thing as just L by itself. So I'm going to flip that to the other side. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this around. Last thing we have to do is we have to solve for L. Remember, we have a fraction, and a fraction is the same thing as a mini division problem. So we have 27 divided by 3. And we know that 27 divided by 3 is 9. So the length of this rectangle, given its area and width, is 9. Okay, so these ones are a little bit more challenging, but still doable. Okay, again, area equals length times width.
And we have to fill in the variables we know. We know the area is 22, so A equals 22. And we know this time we know our length, which is 11, times we do not know our width. So we keep our variable.
Again, to move things from one side of the equal sign to the other, I do the opposite operation. So we're trying to get W by itself, so that means I need to do the opposite of multiplying by 11. So the opposite of multiplying by 11 is dividing by 11. If I do that to one side of the equal sign, I gotta do it to the other. We know that 11 over 11 is the same thing as 1 whole. Okay, that leaves us with just W over here. So I'm gonna flip it around so W, my variable, is on the left. Okay, and I'm gonna put the other side on the right. We just have to simplify this division problem. We have 22 divided by 11. 22 divided by 11 is 2.
So for this rectangle, which has an area of 22 units squared and a length of 11 units, its width is 2 units.
All right, what if I am given the perimeter and need to find the length or the width? Okay, still we're going to start with our formula.
For perimeter, P equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Okay, I'm going to put that over here as well. P equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. Okay?
Now let's start filling in the information we know. We know that P equals 28.
28.
Equals. Okay, we do not know what L is, so we have to keep 2L plus 2, and we do know what W is, so I'm going to replace W with the number 4. And again, I put that in parentheses since there's not a symbol in between our coefficient and the variable. We can simplify this part of our equation, so 28 equals 2 times L plus 8.
Okay, again, we're trying to get L all by itself.
So let's do the next thing. We can get rid of that 8. In order to do that, we subtract 8 from both sides. That leaves us with 20 on this side. 8 minus 8 is 0, so we're left with 2L plus 0 on this side, so just 2L. Again, if we're trying to get L by itself, we do the opposite operation. And even though you don't see it, there's a little multiplication sign, which is also a dot, in between the coefficient and the variable. So to get L by itself, we have to do the opposite.
Opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. I do it to one side, I do it to the other.
So 2 over 2 is the same thing as 1 whole. So we're left with 1L, which I'm going to put on the left now. And we're left with 20 divided by 2.
We know that 20 divided by 2 equals 10.
So our length here is 10.
For this problem, we know that our perimeter is 24, so fill in P is 24, equals, this time we do know our length, so it's 2 times 7 for length, plus 2 times W. We still don't know what W is, so we're going to keep that the same. Start simplifying this equation. We can start by multiplying 2 times 7. So 24 equals 2 times 7, which is 14. Yeah, let's get rid of that 14. It looks like I'm adding 14, so to get rid of 14, I've got to subtract it from both sides. Okay, so if I do that, 24 minus 14 leaves us with 10. 14 minus 14 is 0, plus 2W, so we have 2W. Okay, in order to get W by itself, we got to get rid of that 2 that it's being multiplied by, so the opposite of that is dividing. Divide by 2. I do it to one side, I do it to the other. 2 over 2 is the same thing as 1 whole W, which now I'm going to put on the left, and we're left with 10 divided by 2. We all know that 10 divided by 2 equals 5, so the width here was 5.